feel it boiling over.
Hi, I'm Carlene, and this is Diva Tonight. I have with me on Zoom Jodi Law, and she is in Manchester, UK, United Kingdom, I guess is what you say. Most people say the UK, so how are you?
Hi, Carlene. Yeah, okay.
That's good.
The accent's not very Mancunian.
Definitely. I think a lot of people especially here in North America, we're always a little bit obsessed with the British accent or, just any accent that sounds different from ours because it's carried as the well-spoken, right? So
And so then an Australian accent comes on and it throws everything completely. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So anyways, the show is Diva Tonight, and this is 40, a female perspective. And basically, I'm talking to women who are 40 or women who are older just to talk about their personal stories and their personal experiences. And for you, you've had quite the journey. You've worked in the healthcare sector health system for 30 years. And, I think the hardest thing to discuss is being in an emotionally abusive marriage for 11 years. I'm not married, but I think I can understand what that's like myself because abusive family is what I grew up with. And I don't really talk about it, but I think when you're at this stage in life, you are comfortable talking about certain things. So for you, what was the deciding factor in leaving an abusive relationship? What was the turning point?
Yeah, that's I have come such a long way since then. But for me, there was a couple of things that happened, actually. So it was actually a 20-year marriage.
Yeah.
And we were about 12 years in before I had children. So at that stage, my children were really like 5 and 7. They were young. And it had got to the stage where I didn't have any input with them in the relationship. I was working and basically bringing in the money and long shifts. So I'd go to work and they were in bed and I'd get home and they were in bed. And so when I did get to see them, they already had the three of them, as in my ex-husband and the 2 children, had their routine going on. So even when I wasn't working, it was like I was a lodger in my own home. And so there was a couple of things that happened. I met someone who I just found really interesting and we moved around a lot. So even though I went to work, like you say, you don't talk about that sort of stuff. Like you just don't. And emotional abuse is a funny thing because like physical abuse, you can see it, but emotional is a totally different thing. You basically end up second guessing yourself all the time. You don't know who you are anymore at all because everything that you think you believe is questioned by the other party. So you're really lost. And so we'd been in a place this time for 2 years and I got to know a couple of the girls that I work with. And there was a couple of situations where it was just so evident that my ex-husband was just so rude to them. And I thought, oh my God, it's not just me at all. It's not me, it's him. And they were just so blatant. And I had got to that point where I didn't have the children in my life how I wanted to be a parent. And it was just like, that's it. I'd had enough. Like there was no plan other than I need to get out of here. And so I did. I literally packed a suitcase and I paint. So I took a couple of canvases and left. And the story that I think he told the children was that I was just going to stay with a friend but he's not very open about those things. So I don't actually know what story he did tell the children. Anyway, life's a lot different now. But at the time, it was, I'm so pleased I left. But oh my God, the heartache that you go through when you walk down the steps of the property that you've been living with and when they're out going for a coffee and you just don't go back. Like,
yeah, it feels like you left a life that you were so used to, right? And I always wonder, because it's like they say that we kind of like embody the life that we grew up with. So I don't know, were your parents married? Did they have a good marriage? Did you have good role models in that sense?
Yeah, exactly. Like it was so different to how I grew up. Like no other My
Yeah.
childhood was middle class, mum, dad, three sisters, and very uneventful, which is pretty good
Yeah.
compared to
Yeah.
what I've experienced as a child.
So it's like a total experience. Like it's more
Well,
like a trauma.
that's the
Yeah.
thing, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
either like you grew up or it's totally opposite. It's a bit like, that's what I say to my daughter, you do realize you'll either marry someone like your father or someone totally opposite. It's not an in-between thing. And I went totally opposite with my relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? I think it's you don't know someone until you live with them and their behavior changes, and there's obviously some issues that they haven't dealt with, and you can only help so much, right? And so
But also, though, I wasn't in a good place when I met him. You don't meet people like that if you're happy about yourself. And he was quite a bit older than me, so there was a lot of issues going on. And I had travelled on my own. I'd done a lot of stuff on my own, and I wasn't happy with my career choice. All these things that bundled up into me not having a very high self-esteem anyway.
yeah.
Because if I had been happy, I would have met someone that I was happy with. Do you know what I mean?
They always say that. So I was talking to a colleague of mine yesterday, and she's, there's a lot of things like, when you listen to these podcasts, like the Mel Robbins podcast, or even the Greatness podcast, where they talk about how you have to be happy with yourself and where you are in life to attract that kind of person. And you
Absolutely.
said yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you feel that
100%.
way? Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, so my healing journey began when I left there, and I've learned so much about me since, because I didn't know anything about me. I mean, even just basic stuff. It was like I had no blueprint of how to live life. It was that whole, when I got out, like I can remember, this is how I smile and laugh, because it's just like, how does an intelligent woman get herself into this position? But it doesn't matter. I mean, anyone, it can happen to anyone. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So I can remember going to work not long after I'd left, and my sister had given me enough money to get a car. So I remember in my head, it was such a big deal. I had to visualize how I was going to go to the petrol station and get petrol in the car, because I was just so stressed about the fact, because I hadn't done it on my own. Like, and then that was before I got to work. I was just so stressed. It was crazy. But that's the extent it was. It was
You
what
were
happens
going
when
through.
Yeah.
It's what happens when you're going through the motions, or you're just going
It was
through
completely
your
that.
day?
It's just like there was no blueprint on how to live my life outside that, because I'd been in such a cocoon for so long. We moved around so much and we did so much. Yeah, so we had no community output. It wasn't, and I'd never owned a car. We had a joint car, but I didn't drive it much. It was a very, very controlling situation. It's it's just so unhealthy. And so when I actually did get out and I had to start living on my own, I had no blueprint on how to live on my own. It was just bizarre, because I hadn't done anything on my own for such a long time.
Yeah. But what I want to know is, where did you meet him? Like you said, you were a lot younger when you did. So
yeah, I actually met him I'd been traveling overseas over here. I'd done the European stint like a lot of Australians do.
Yeah.
And I'd gone back to Perth, and he was out there. He'd actually been a 10-pound pomp. So he'd lived there, and he'd been back in 2, and he was out there, and that's when I met him. So I've been traveling around, not knowing where to look and what to do, and went back home and met him, and I was looking for direction. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. It's like when you're young and you don't understand the world, like you said, we're not given the blueprint of how to raise a child. Like, there's books on it, but there's not, until you're actually going through it yourself, or even if you have like role models, like you're saying, it's being confident in yourself and knowing, like, this is not a good person, like it, and knowing to have boundaries too. I think having that self-confidence it's easier said than done. It really is.
And this is the thing. I think, like, I look back now, like I've got, yes, absolutely, I've got boundaries, and I'm totally confident in myself. But this is 11 years later. I'm a totally different person. But it took, excuse my French, it took balls, because when you come, like, I was in such a low spot. But everything that I've learned, it's incredibly empowering. And you don't have to be at that point that I was at to benefit from all the stuff that I'm now imparting to people with the work that I do. And but it is so powerful that if you've got that confidence within you, then it's kind of like nothing matters. Whatever happens, you can deal with. It's that. So,
but getting out, but I mean, you've experienced it and other women have. And if someone is listening and they're in an abusive relationship now and they don't feel like they can get out, if they have kids, they don't, you know what I mean? What do you say to them? Because like you said, it took you so long to find the courage and determination to be like, I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, it is a really good question, because obviously with all this, there is no right and wrong. And like there's so much judgment attached to all of this. Yeah. But honestly, if they're listening, just do it. Just whatever it takes to find some internal thing and leave. And, like statistically, it takes, now this was about 10 years ago, it might even be longer. But for someone, this is even with just physical abuse, it takes 7 times on average for a woman to leave. And she keeps returning, but 7 times on average before they actually leave fully. So for some women, it's a hell of a lot longer. But it's that habit that they get in. That it just is just a habit. It's what they're natural and they're comfortable with, even though it's abusive. And it does take courage to change habits, even if it's just a simple habit of like eating too much chocolate. Like how difficult is that? Let alone something that's that grassroots level that everybody, every time you get up in the morning, you're in fear. It's a terrible situation. And there's so many people in those situations. Yeah. Very much.
And I'm sure like even when you left, like you had to do a lot of self-healing, Oh
my God. Seriously, the walking out was, the reality is the walking out was the easy bit, because you are totally on your own. And yes, there are organisations out there that help, but to be honest, I left without my children. And
I wanted to ask about that.
I didn't have the children, so I got less help because I didn't have the children.
Do you feel like you had to leave the kids, like for you to get out?
Definitely. Like I was in mentally, I wasn't in a state where I could, and also because the relationship had gone like it gone, he was Mr. Mum, so it was less traumatic for them. If I'd taken them with me, I had no infrastructure to how to deal with my children, and I was the one earning the money as well. So you know what I mean? So none of that was in place. So if I'd waited to sort that out, I never would have left. That's the truth. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's the relationship like now with your kids?
Bloody fantastic.
There we go. I love that.
It's so honestly,
I can feel the energy when you say that. You're like, bloody fantastic. I feel it when you say that.
Yeah.
So that's amazing for sure. It's like it took you, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And so you had to do what you needed to do for yourself first before you could take care of them, right?
Oh, look, 100%. 100%. And, like I never lost contact with them, and I always saw them. But I mean, initially, like it was kind of like, well, what do I do with my kids when I have them? Because I hadn't had them in any circumstances. It was really basic stuff. But what is it like to be a mum? I don't know. Haven't been it on my terms.
Oh, and then they've gotten used to living with their dad and living in that kind of environment too, where he spent most of the time with them, right? And while you were at work, right? So, yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's not like your normal mother-daughter or mother-son relationship, but it's fantastic. And my daughter's actually just left for uni this last year, but prior to that, we were actually living together again. And so after 9 years, we were living together. So it's been you're just so grateful for the little things, even the 17-year-old tantrums and all the things that go with the hormones attached to being a teenager. But it's really precious, I have to say. It's always like brings tears to my eyes how good it is. And it's just normal. Like we still argue. Like she triggers me absolutely. But I love every second of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is she studying in school?
She's at university. She's doing liberal arts, and she's got herself into rowing, which she loves, and she's
Oh,
finding out who she is, and
yeah.
it's really lovely to watch. The
Yeah.
idea of let's be in that, because in the UK, in Australia, when we went to uni, you live in the city where the university is, whereas in the UK, everyone goes away to university, so
Oh.
they learn how to cook and communicate and all those sort of things away from home.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of like the experience itself to go away from home life and start a new life on campus and figure out who you are as a person. Oh, okay. I think I always wanted to do that when I was home. I wanted to go away, but my mom was like, "No, you're staying here." And then I went to York here in Toronto, and I mean, it was a good experience. I met some good friends there, but I think there's a part of me, I think they escape to, like in the movies, they make it seem so surreal,
Yes,
right? And so
yeah,
it's just like,
absolutely. And I think that's what they
hmm
totally. It's total
yeah.
sort of social media movies now for sure.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Is it ever? Was it that whole experience you brought her to school, like on campus, and then you helped her get settled in? And was it emotional for you too? Like, it's like you're not a complete empty nester because your son is obviously not ready for university yet, but how did that feel?
It was, yeah, I mean, it was empty. It was like an empty nest when she'd gone. And she was very emotional about it too. But it's like, once they settle in and make a couple of friends, like she's really enjoying it. She's really enjoying the whole experience, very social and fitting in nicely. And it is very much like, okay, so look at it now. I don't have to be where I am because I was here for her education. So where will I be? But I mean, in the UK somewhere, because Australia's a
Yeah.
long way away.
Yeah.
If I went back to Australia, it's like a 20-hour flight to get back. So you'd never see your children, maybe once
hmm
every 5 years or something. So that's not on the cards at the moment, but it opens up other options. And it's definitely different, even though it was only one child, one teenager.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up in Australia? I mean, you are the first that I've met from Australia. And I mean, what was that like? Tell me,
Yeah, I grew up in the
Um,
country. So Perth
oh,
in Western Australia, Perth is the most isolated city in the world. And I grew up 5.5 hours south of Perth.
wow.
So right on the bottom, if you kept going south, you would hit the Antarctica. So as far as you can go south in Western Australia. And it like space and simple. Space, sea, sun.
hmm
Yeah. And
Yeah.
they're the three things that I miss most is just
Yeah.
everything big, whereas everything here is small.
Right, right, right. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like it's like more of a small town where you knew your neighbors and in that kind of community. Is that what you mean?
Yes, it was very much
Yeah.
like that, actually. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
now the population in the town is 16,000 people in the Shire as well, so in the farming community,
Oh
and
my gosh, in the Shire. When I
as
hear
well,
that, I think of
and
Lord of the Rings.
there is no traffic lights in the town. There's
Yes.
lots of roundabouts, but there's still no traffic lights, and this is how many years later? Really?
16 years later. Oh my gosh. So is it true? Like in Lord of the Rings, when they say in the Shire, do you think that they've pictured it the same way, or it's kind of like they've made it more Hollywood? You know what I mean? I don't know if you've seen Lord of the
I
Rings.
haven't
So
seen Lord of the
oh, you
Rings.
haven't.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
well, the
That's the
Shire is
only
just
reference.
surrounding countryside.
Yeah,
It's where
yeah,
the farmers live,
exactly.
out of town.
Exactly. hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they've done a justice to that. That's the only picturesque that I have
Oh, okay.
when I think of it that way. That's why I said that. So yeah. That's so amazing, You've had quite the journey. So even still, I mean, you career-wise, you were working in the health sector, right? And
Mhm.
so what was that like? I mean, you were working long hours, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've travelled with that all around Australia. So I've done all sorts of different bits and pieces in different areas of nursing. And then I ended up in intensive care,
Yeah.
postgraduate in that. Yeah, and it's now that I'm not in it any longer. And then I ended up actually in a cardiac catheterization laboratory, which is basically when you have a heart attack, you come into us and we'll put in stents to open up the blood vessels.
Oh,
If you need a pacemaker,
yeah,
put a pacemaker in.
Oh my gosh, my uncle's a cardiologist, so he puts in the pacemakers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that was sort of where I ended up with all that. And parts of it are fantastic. Like the cardiology, there is so much research and so many moves forward in technology and what they do in the hospital setting. But there's also a lot of things that happen in the hospital setting, that chronic illness, for example, that isn't dealt so well with. And the more I got involved in, so I got involved in energy medicine way back when I left the relationship 11 years ago, 12 years ago nearly. And I started yoga, actually. So that was my first experience of, I actually was introduced to yoga, and I joined this regular yoga studio. And they have this special start of for 6 weeks for $25. So I go along and I knew I needed some assistance to get through the working day. So I went every day. And the first 2 weeks I was in tears at the end of every class. And I figured that, I get this sort of relief. I didn't really know what was going on, but there was got to be something. And then not so long after that, I started a yoga teacher training course. And then, so straight away, when I started that's when things started to change, because I was introduced to people, these beautiful people who I hadn't had in my life before. And then 3 months into that, I was introduced to energy psychology. So it was all about what your emotions and the connection between your emotions and your body. And basically I got to work on myself for the next 18 months. And it was completely, no question, it was transformational. But then life happens, and then my ex-husband, who's English from Manchester, decides he's moving the children to the UK. And they all have dual citizenship, and I had to get a visa to get here.
Wow.
And I didn't get the first visa I applied for, did I? It was such
always a challenge, isn't it? We just can't get things the easy way. It's like, yeah.
I know. So clearly, I wasn't ready to go. So 2 years later, I got over here. And
oh my gosh, it took you 2 years. Wow.
I know, this is we're part of the Commonwealth. Australia is part of the Commonwealth. We speak the same language. Our qualifications at a higher standard than the ones here. So, but I wasn't coming on a nursing visa. It was access right to child's visa, because the children were here.
Oh, right,
And I didn't get it the first time round because it was on financial grounds. In the time that I applied, they changed the goalposts. So I went through an agency, and they said to me, no, just show that you got $10,000 in your account. That's fine. So I just showed I had $10,000 in my account. And in the time that I applied, in the 3 months it takes to get it, they changed the goalpost, and I needed $20,000. So they wouldn't take me on financial grounds. So I had to wait another 6 months to reapply. Yeah, I know.
Horrible. Yeah.
And then when I got here, I
giving you financial advice. Yeah.
This is it. Exactly.
I'm like, I want my money back. You guys gave me horrible advice. Now I have They actually did. They got me through. They did the whole thing. They did.
The next time, but 9 months later, sort of thing. So, and then when I got here, I actually did more modalities, because for me, that was my way of coping with a move. Only knowing your ex-husband and children come to a new life in the UK. So,
wow.
Yeah.
A new life beyond your choice. You know what I mean? It was kind of like you were
you got to follow your children, aren't you?
Yeah, of course. You can't not. No. Yeah. What a journey. Yeah. Yeah. And so wait a minute. So when you moved to the UK, what was that like? Did you have to get your own place and start all over again? Right?
It's really interesting when you move to a new country, because you have no credit rating. You don't exist. And so even to open a bank account, I had to open online bank accounts, because I couldn't get one in the high street, because I had no credit rating. So,
oh my gosh, yeah.
I know. Wow. It's like you're a no person. So it's been an interesting thing. And I guess, so I walked straight into a nursing job, though, in the private sector over here. And it was, I'd been doing energy medicine back at home, part-time nursing. And there's so much red tape here in the health, so much more than in equivalent in Australia. So, paperwork involvement. I mean, I know it's the health system in Australia. There's a lot more paperwork than there ever was when we started into the profession. But here, honestly, and just the politics attached to the work environment, it was just unbelievable. And I guess the more you get involved in energy medicine as well, your life and your beliefs and your ideals change, and you're living from your heart. So it's a lot hard. I've always been being Australian, you're pretty blunt anyway. But the more you get into energy work, your authenticity that's the key to your life. That's your, and
when you say energy work, are you talking about living a life with mindfulness in mind, or just mindful living? Is that what you're saying when you
I guess everything. So if you look at life as everything is energy, the way we think and what we say and movement, all of that. So, the only reason we're not feeling great is because we've got energy blocks in our body. And when you start looking at life from in a mind, body, soul sense from energy, your whole life can't help but change. And so that began with yoga, because yoga is a form of energy medicine. You're doing movement with the breath and you're moving energy. And then the energy psychology, you're working emotions are just an energy. You're using emotions to tune into your body, and where are you feeling that discomfort, or what emotion are you feeling? And you're getting the energy to move through emotions. So, and then mindfulness is all about tuning into you. What is it that you are feeling? So being okay with whatever it is that you're feeling, and just allowing that to be there, rather than focusing on a story that doesn't feel great. Focus on the feeling, get the feeling to move. Because if the more you focus on the story, the more you are just playing out at that frequency of story. So if it's not a great story and it makes you feel annoyed or aggravated or scared, then the more you tell that story, you're staying in that same loop of energy frequency. So if you can start to feel your energy and getting it flow, then you're going to transform it and raise the frequency and feel a darn sight better. So there's a lot of things that energy is, because energy is everything. But there's a whole systematic approach you can take to it when you're starting to have that transformation and change the way you think. Because again, it's habits. How do we change those habits and rewire the neural pathways in the brain?
Diva Tonight. Glamour for your ears. This is 40, a female perspective.
I'm Carlene, and this is Diva Tonight. We are discussing mindfulness a little bit. Actually, we're discussing a lot of things. We're discussing life after 40 with Jodi Law in the UK. And we were just talking about the energy practice that you've started. Obviously, it's been many years now that you've been practicing this lifestyle, but it's very interesting because I was saying to you, when you're starting any practice or any new habit, it's like my instructor said to me, when you're practicing mindfulness, it's kind of like going to the gym every day. You just don't, in the beginning, you don't want to go, but you have to. So it's the same thing with the mindfulness practice itself, or any energy work, like you said, because you're doing yoga, and now I guess you were saying you're a yoga instructor, right? Like while you were practicing nursing, so wow, you're doing a lot.
Yeah, and all of it. I've actually created all the things that I have learned, and it's the shortcuts that I've learned along the way, because it is about creating a practice that benefits you. And if you can start the day in a way that is going to be a high frequency day and you're going to feel good, then to me, it makes sense to do that. So I've actually created a 12-week program, and it's all about, first of all, what is it that does stress you? What stories are we telling ourselves? So you really dig deep. This is the online component, and there's mindfulness in it. There's grounding. There's all sorts of stuff that really start getting you in those really basic habits, energy medicine exercises that really help ground and create a great framework. And then it's looking at harnessing all of that. Now we know what's going on. How do we want our lives to be? Because if you don't know what's going on, you don't know what to change. So it is really a step-by-step thing. And the really good thing is that we get online as well, one-on-one, and we have sessions online throughout it. So when you're triggered with the questions that are asked, then, right, let's sort it out. Let's dig in and go. So energy psychology, we it's like a visualizations, and you go through and find out whereabouts in the body you're feeling the emotion you're feeling, whatever it is, the topic that you want to deal with at the time. And then it's really just like, it's like a brainstorm. Just get out, because you're dealing with the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind is the part of the brain that creates the habits. So let's tap into that and start changing the habits there. And once you've allowed that energy to move, we then need to reinforce new habits so that we can rewire the brain, yeah? And so your hand is held for a 12-week period. Your hand is held to create those new habits that are going to serve you to get the life that you want to live. And energy medicine is like, we can test, I can show you how to energy test your body, because energies don't lie. And you can see where the strengths and weaknesses are in your own body. And then you know which exercises to do to create balance. So it's a therapeutic tool. And for me, it was really important to have therapeutic tools so you could see the before and after. And maybe it's because of my background, but it's
as
also,
a nurse, I guess it's like visuals, right? Like people, like they say, when you're starting a new habit or when you want to see, like you're working on a goal, you want to see the results. Like when you write a book, you know that you've written a book because you have a copy of the book. And like the same thing, when you lose weight, you can go on the scale and, you know, but the same thing,
yes,
I guess, with energy practice, right?
Yeah. And this is the thing. So the modalities that I use, this is where we're at now, and we can test your energies. And initially there'll be some changes that will happen quite quickly.
Right.
But other changes, other habits will be more stubborn. But there's other ways that we can approach them. There's so many things that you can do. And a lot of the things to do are quite simple, but unless you know to do them, you're not going to start the habits. It's that sort of thing. And, you know, for me, so yes, I'm Australian. My name, like Jodi Law, Jodi Ann, even with my middle name, Jodi Ann Law, it's short. Everything's practical. And the whole thing is so practical because if you can't use it, and for me, I needed it on an everyday basis. When I started, I needed something desperately. And I was really seeking out stuff. And what I've honed it down to is really practical stuff that you can use and start, and you can change your life with it. And I've had some great success with it on other people. So
it really is a lifestyle change, and it's hard. Like sometimes I think with society and everyday life, it's one of those things you stop for a little bit and then you have to be reminded. Like I remember my instructor, like just checking in on us, you know, those of us that were in the workshop. And I find it's very interesting when you talk about like you needed something to work on every day. I think we all do. We all need a routine. Even myself, I fall off the routine many times. I'm just so rebellious with that. But it's important to do the reps, do the steps, you know, as they say.
Well, I think the thing with frameworks, it's interesting, isn't it? Someone once said this to me, and it's stuck in my head because it's so true. If you've got a framework of stuff that works for you, because the things that work for me aren't going to work for you the same.
Right.
Like it's very individual. But if you've got a framework and once you've created that framework and you've got this inner feeling of contentment because you are living your life true to your consciousness, you know, true to you, and you're being authentic, when that's happening, it doesn't matter what happens around you. So even if you have had to miss a day because you're on a plane and you're flying to Australia and it's a 24-hour trip and you can't get to do your routine, that's
Jodi, are you saying
fine.
that to the universe that I need to go to Australia?
And there you go. It could be that, absolutely. Manifestation, open up, bring it in.
Yes. Sorry to interrupt, but go ahead. Yeah. So you're saying you're using that as an example. I know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's so embedded in you to do. But the point is you've got a framework, haven't you, to build on. And once you've got a framework, within that framework, you can create all sorts of play, and it doesn't have to be regimented is what I'm saying. So within the framework, you've got certain things or certain feelings that you want to create, but there's lots of things that you can do within that framework to make it interesting so it doesn't feel monotonous. It's that.
Right. Yeah. I know. I understand what you're saying with monotonous, because for me, I get bored easily. And so if I'm listening to one mindfulness practice, I find I have to change it because I get bored. I was listening to this 5-minute one and now I'm listening to Deepak Chopra, and maybe I'll go back to John Kabat-Zinn, but I need variety. I can't stay with the same pattern day in and day out. I guess some people do. Like,
and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's and that's you finding your thing. That's brilliant. You're doing it. It's that. So you get something out of it for sure.
Yeah. I think, you know what it does is it calms my mind. I have an overactive brain. And one of my doctors said to me that mindfulness, like just like anything else, so many, we're in the digital age where there's like cognitive behavioral therapy. I've taken that as well. And then mindfulness practice, that's another thing. Everyone has to find the thing that works for them. Some people, have to go to the gym. They have to stay active. That helps them de-stress.
Very, very much so. And, I think back, and what I haven't actually said was when I first left, I did the whole conventional thing and
did you go to
took
church?
Antidepressants and saw a psychologist. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
12 months in, nothing had changed. The same story. Like I was no better off at all. It was just talking the same thing. The whole idea of going to a psychologist was so that my story would be different, but nothing had changed. And the antidepressants just numbed. So that was when I sort of thought, there's just like, I'm sorry, can't do this anymore. See you later. Weaned myself, with a GP, weaned off the antidepressants and then started the yoga and absolutely no turning back. It was like chalk and cheese. It was very empowering because you could feel the difference. And it wasn't just talking about so when it
but isn't therapy, do you find you saw a psychiatrist, but I think everyone should see a therapist if they can, if they're dealing with issues in life. I think just having someone else to talk to other than your friends and family, I think,
I'm not absolutely. And I'm not saying no at all.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I'm not saying not at all. So, and I know that's really big in the US, isn't it? To see a therapist. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there is more of a stigma attached to it in the UK and Australia as well.
Oh, there is. Okay.
Yeah. But so, and it would be a psychologist that you would see. But I really didn't find it helped me at all. And I suppose because if it had been when I was 20 and I wasn't wiser in the world, but I was in my early 40s when I left. So by that stage, it was almost like I would give them advice because they just stepped out of a textbook, and it frustrated me a lot. And I know not everybody has that experience, but my experience was, this just isn't working for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like you said, there isn't always a pill that will help someone. You know what I mean? Maybe in a short interim, but not necessarily the case in your own experience. And
I think the thing to do is take it up. Like if you get offered those opportunities, take like CBT, take them up and try them. Because if it doesn't work, there are other things is the point.
I think I don't like the digital aspect of it. Like I did the Zoom CBT, but I do understand why it is a good practice because it makes you think about the action and the outcome. Like if I do this, or how am I helping myself? Because I think the one thing we don't always think about in the moment of stress, you don't always think about how you're going to behave. Like I'm a person where it's like, if someone annoys me, I just walk away, or maybe I'll go take a 5-minute break. You know what I mean? They're just like to take a breather because it's just like,
it's about reacting. It's about not reacting. It's not jumping in and screaming and carrying on. It's about pause. Let's pause. Let's respond rather than react. Yeah.
And some of us do react. I think when you're working, like for you.
When you're stressed. Oh my God. Absolutely.
Yeah. You worked in healthcare as a nurse for so many years. And that's a very stressful environment, very high pressure. Right.
Yeah. And it absolutely was. And the parts of the job I really enjoyed, but it was the politics that really drove it into me. And by the time I'd left, I was burnt out. The last trial, my health started to deteriorate.
Yeah.
And when you're not listening, your health keeps deteriorating until you do something about it. So
what's the name? Oh, sorry. So what is the name of the business that you do now? So it's Transformative.
It's actually Jodi Law. It's after that's my name. So
we can check you out. Just put your name in Google, Jodi Law, and then we'll find you. And,
it's Jodi. It's Jodi with an I and Anne with an E. But it's take control of your health naturally is the strap line. But I've got on my website, I have got free affirmations, So one of the things that are really good to do is have that positive affirmations playing so that it uplifts you. And that's something that can raise your frequency for the start of the day. There's a thing around anxiety. It's just really simple things that can help you if you're feeling anxious, what to do. And you can just have a look at those. They're free on my website. And you can also book in a free consultation for 30 minutes if you wanted to have a chat about things. Because energetically, the other really good thing I love about it, not only is it a therapeutic tool, the way I use it, but it can complement anything, any other treatment that you might be getting. It empowers you to understand yourself from an energetic point of view and find out what's going on in you. You have such a different relationship within you when you tune into what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're feeling emotionally, and how you're feeling physically, when you tune into that on a regular basis.
Do you think that this practice has made you like a more understanding parent? Like, has it changed?
Oh my God. Like
you have with your daughter?
Completely and utterly. And I think also, a lot of the people that find energy medicine are people that they're seeking it for a start because they're not getting the answers they want externally. And once they started, empaths, there's a lot of people in the health system that are empaths, but because that's why they go into that type of work. And energy medicine's the same. It's because your senses are heightened, like the fact that you feel emotions in a lot more depth than other people, then once you start to understand them, it's your superpower. So then you start to know what to do with it. It's that.
You're so right about that. I think when you realize that your energy, like people are either sucking the energy from you or they're adding to that energy, and you have to figure out how to manage your day to day with dealing with different people.
We were talking about boundaries earlier, all of that comes into it, and you can do so much intentionally. And there's exercises that can help with all that energetically, because we've got 9 energy systems in our body that we can work with for all of that as well. So we're just doing certain exercises that can benefit exactly that. When you know that you're going to speak with an energy vampire that just sucks the life out of you, you can do things intentionally so that they stay in their energy and you stay in yours. Because, and it gives you so much more power because you leave them then not feeling frazzled. You've gone in and said what you needed to say, and then you've left on your energetic terms.
I like that. You left on your own energetic terms. I think this lifestyle, I think it's been around a long time, you know what I mean? Since back then, I guess even before the 80s, because I know John Kabat-Zinn, who they call him the grandfather of mindfulness practice, right? Because he's been doing it so long, but very great person. I've great respect for him and from what I've learned. And it's like you said, it's a way of life. And like, you said something though, there are 9 energy systems. What are those? Like,
the modality that I use, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's Eden method. Donna Eden, she's actually an American woman. And she can see energy. So she has spent her lifetime creating protocols for people that can't see energy, so that the people that can't see energy can learn them and teach and heal people. So it's healing with your hands. But she's gone around. So when she was in her late 20s, she hadn't had very good health her whole life. She had MS when she was diagnosed at 16. And then at 29, I think it was, she had a heart attack and was told to put all her affairs in order. And she had 2 young children at the time. And she could see energy, so she decided she was going to try and heal herself. And within 2 years, she had no more symptoms of MS. And then she started working on other people. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's just gone from strength to strength. And so a lot of the modalities it's a mixture of modalities. So we're talking ancient healing. Yeah. And kinesiology is a form of energy medicine. And that's the therapeutic part of this that I do. You can test for over energies or under energies and what's going on. And she went to a kinesiology talk when she was trying to learn all about what she saw and match it up. And she came back home so excited because those things that go up and down the body, they're meridians. That's what I see. And those things that go round and round, they're chakras. Oh my God, how exciting. She had a name to what she could see. So she's kind of done everything back to front. So she's borrowed from all sorts of the modalities to match what she sees and created protocols. And because we've got 9 energy systems we can play with, if something isn't working for somebody, you can approach it in a different way. So there's lots of tools that you can use. And, balancing hormones for chronic pain, for the immune system. And like 90% of chronic illness is caused by stress. So let's use energy medicine to balance that out, because there's part of energy systems that's like the arteries and veins of the anatomy world, called the meridians. Part of that is the triple warmer. Now, the triple warmer is the fight and flight. Now, have you heard of fight and flight?
Yes, fight for flight. Yes, I have. Yes.
Yeah. So there's an energy component that's just like that. And so
your fight for flight response, is that what you mean? Like when you're
exactly. So, when we're stressed, we're in fight and flight. And which means when we're in rest and digest, our body is harmonious and we're growing as we should and everything's happy and we haven't got symptoms, right? But the majority of time we're in fight and flight because we're stressed. We've got deadlines to meet. We've got horrible bosses. We've got all these things going on and so the hormones that are running through our body are stress hormones. But our body hasn't advanced from caveman days. So the hormones running through our bodies aren't designed to be there for very long periods of time. They were designed if you were going to get eaten by the tiger, or you would have run like hell and got away. But because they're in our body all the time, we can't be in rest and digest, because you can't be in fight and flight and rest and digest at the same time. So if we're constantly in fight and flight, all those hormones running around our body that are going nowhere, then we can't be. Our growth and reproductive system isn't going to work properly. You think about IVF and how much IVF there is now and how people just can't get pregnant because they're chronically stressed. Look at your gastrointestinal tract with more people with irritable bowel. All the mainstream systems, just your immune system. How many people everybody knows someone with cancer and autoimmune illness because we're chronically stressed. So if we can harness that stress component and balance that out and calm it down. So in the energy world, the triple warmer is like the fight and flight. And then what happens, that's usually part of the meridian. You can test for it in your energy system. That's usually over-energized. And because it's one system, the meridian system is one system, it has to draw from somewhere to get the energy to be overactive. And the first place it draws is the spleen meridian. And so for most of us, the spleen is under-energized. It needs some energy. And so it's the balance between the triple warmer at spleen. For most people, when they come to see me, that is the first thing we need to balance. Because once the triple warmer is calmed down and the spleen has come down, then the energies are a lot easier to read in the body. Because the triple warmer acts as the security guard. You can't come. No, I'm not going to show anything. I'm not going to show anything. So once that's calmed down, it's like, oh. And mindfulness is a really good way of calming down the triple warmer, because it's that, when you shut your eyes and you're doing a meditation, it's like, it's that. Yeah. And there's all sorts of holds we can do. You can do simple holds to calm the triple warmer because it's so overactive in most of us. We're just doing more than we're designed to do. So
is the practice a lot better if you close your eyes? Because sometimes I just have the calm mindfulness practice or the 10-minute mindfulness playing in the background sometimes, because if I'm running late or whatever, but running late in the morning, to get to work, or I'm in a rush. So I feel like it helps a bit, but is it always better to practice with your eyes closed? That way you could mindfully wash the dishes. It's just intense. So you could just do it, realize what you're doing and slowly wash the dishes. Dry them. So it's very much about just let's slow everything down and be in the moment. Mm-hmm. So we're not listening to the outside noise. So as much as when you're preparing and hurrying around while you're listening to mindfulness, I'm not sure how much here and now. Because I've actually memorized what he says. You know what I mean? Like he says that, the birds and the bees, like they all do the same thing. Like, pretty much that's what Deepak Chopra says. Like, so be mindful of like people, just let them be. It's pretty much the same message. So the law of least effort is what I listen to. And so, like you said, while I'm rushing, I'm not really, I get what you said, I'm not really being completely mindful, but because I've listened to it so much, I know exactly what he's going to say.
So then from within that, like it's a bit like, if you wake up in the morning and you don't even have to say it out loud, but what are you grateful for? So if you're doing that and you're appreciating what audio is saying, then there is obviously that's better than not doing, if that's going to help you get into the car and go to work in a more mindful state. Of course, there's no right or wrong in any of the things. That is the whole thing. Yeah. Is there a right way to do mindfulness? No, there isn't. There's certainly, if someone wanted to know what to do because they'd never done it before, I could certainly guide them, but it's not a right and wrong way. It's be okay with whatever you're feeling is the thing. Is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable with mindfulness, if that's your thing. Because a lot of people, when they do start, it is very uncomfortable just sitting still and
it
listen.
is. Mm-hmm.
And they have that noisy monkey mind. But so the idea would be, don't start with half an hour meditation, just do a couple of minutes or do a breath meditation, something that guides you so you're listening to the voice.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's just starting off and keeping at it. I think that's the one thing is just the regimented lifestyle. And like, I think as my instructor said, it's like you have to not just do it on your own at home, but also be in the community, because sometimes I think when you're dealing with your day-to-day and your family or your friends are not practicing mindfulness, it's hard. It's easier to fall off this pattern, this lifestyle. That's why you have to get back at it. So just talking to you about it, it's very interesting to hear a different aspect of it, because you're talking about the energy side. And there's so many things that people don't know about what actual energy you have, if they believe in that. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want to force anyone, but I learned something about just even the kind of energy pattern you have.
Well, so I kind of think that everybody is put on this earth for a purpose.
Yes.
And if we were all living our purpose, the world would be such a different place, because we would be living, your authenticity, but also that your head and your heart are lined up when you're living your purpose. So the things that you do, like the heart radiates so much more energy than any other part of your body. And if you can breathe through the heart and start living through the heart and do everything, so, your intuition, we're talking here. If you get comfortable enough with your intuition to be guided by that, so you need your head to help action what your heart is telling you. And when those two are lined up, that's the place to be. And, as being human, it's a practice for me as well, even though I've been doing it for some time. And everybody is human. And can we be like that 24/7? Keep practicing? Yes, you will be. But we do all fall off the bandwagon. So don't beat yourself up if you do. But it's a really good thing to work towards, because the thing is, it's inner peace. And I know that I had certainly been searching that for a very, very long time. And now, the majority of times, that's exactly how I feel. So it's worth doing. I feel it's worth doing. And when you get that positive reinforcement, but also what happens when you start, if you have a graph of, this is where I am now energetically, I'm just starting my journey, and this is where I want to be. Mm-hmm. That straight line, it certainly is not a straight line. When I started on my journey, I'm here, and I started learning a bit about it, and my frequency started to be raised, and God, it needed to be. So up I go, and then it goes down again, and then it's up and down. But you're on a trajectory up here, so it is up and down. And initially, it can feel like you're never making any headway. But the first time you do something you're never going to go down as far as this initial stage. You just don't, because you're on that trajectory and you've got more awareness. So start having that awareness, and you start on that trajectory, and you go up, and you have some really good days, and then it might dip again. And then some good days and dip again. But you're heading up this way. And the closer you get to here, it actually curves off more, because you've got more tools and you've got more of your life in a higher frequency. It's easier to get out of those dips, because you've got more tools to use to get out of the dips. And when people around you aren't in that lifestyle and you want to bring that into yours, it is harder. because your environment you're in plays a massive role in it, because that's energy as well, isn't it? So yes, seek out community groups that are doing things that you're interested in that will help raise your frequency. Because if you're not around it, it is a lot harder to do. But if you're around it, you're sitting in it as well. So it's there more constantly. And so as you on your journey up the curve, you're going to be around more people like that as well. Because the law of attraction, it just seeks you out because that's the energy you're emitting. I don't know if you're familiar with Joe Dispenza.
No, I'm not. I think I've heard of him.
He is. He's a big name in the US. He's fantastic. He's very much the science behind all this stuff. It's about rewiring your neural pathways.
Right.
So you are your own placebo, and the body is designed to heal itself. That's the premise on all the work that I do. Your body is designed to heal itself. You just got to give it the right environment to do so. And if you can say you wanted a really nice house, it's manifestation. You want a really nice house, and you know where you want to live it. If you imagine living in it and being in it now before you actually have it, you're letting your body and your mind know that that's what you want. And because you're feeling it, you've got to feel it. If you say these things, they're just words. You've got to actually feel it internally so that you then create that space and that pathway so your brain actually thinks you're there. Because your brain doesn't know the difference between it happening now or your imagination. So the more you can imagine and really feel, you're already rewiring your brain to get that house and to get that place. I was listening to something he was saying the other day, really interesting. So women who live alone, he has these week-long advanced retreats and they hook people up brainwaves for meditation and everything. And women that live alone are much more in their flow more often than not, because they're in the environment to do so, because women notoriously look after everybody else first. So if you're in a household or even with a partner, you're worried about them first and what their energy is doing, so that you're less likely to just focus on you and your authenticity and your high frequency. So they've done studies on women, single women that have gone on these retreats, and they have a much higher in their flow over a 24-hour period than other people, because they've got the opportunity to do, and that's how they've created their life. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like, that we as women, they always say that women can live like by themselves and be single and live a happier life, whereas men, not so much. I think they need a partner. But I think going back to what I've learned from listening to other podcasts too, is that we are a human race. And so we're used to being among others. So we can't always be alone. It's good to be alone in retrospect, but we're a social.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that these women aren't involved with men. It's just that they don't live together under the one roof. I mean, how many relationships these days are you have your own place and, you get together because, absolutely.
The show is devoted to, this is 40, the life after 40. So I guess in retrospect, when we do things full circle and we're going back to the beginning of the conversation when you left, you said you were in your 40s, right? Is that correct? So I guess that was like the turning point in your life where you woke up and was
let's just do it all at once.
Yes. But I've gained so much insight from listening to you talk about mindfulness. It's like it's brought me calm again, and I'm taking the notes, and I feel like I'm a student of your practice and what you've done with your life and changed your life because of your journey to where you are now.
It's a no-brainer. Of course I'll share it with the rest of the world. It's that sort of thing. Like when I left the health system, it's trust. Like the other thing that I haven't mentioned is that I paint. And it's only very recently, in the last few months, I've actually put them on my website. But the content of what I paint is energy. And ridiculously, I hadn't even realized that, because I just have always used it as like a journal, but it's my visual representation of that. So, and that's why it's only in the last few months I put them on the website, because they're part of the story, because it's obviously what I used to heal. Yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of things to heal. I used to write poems and I stopped. I think more so when I was a kid, I had those moments where I would wake up in the night and I have an idea. And if you're not using that part of the brain or practicing it, like you don't lose it, but you're not doing it. Just like I think you realize through nursing, like you did the practical thing, like to pay the bills to help support your family. But after doing that for so long and realizing that, okay, it's time to change career path, you found your way and you found something that you're passionate about. And I can tell because you can talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so like how many hours have you got?
I know, right? I was just like, well, looking at the time, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. But we're running out of time again. But it's very insightful. And I'd like to thank you so much for sharing your journey, Jodi Ann. So it's Jodi Ann Law, if anyone wants to check out her website and start their journey or even, have a session.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
the energy work, it's we're here on Zoom, but I can definitely feel the energy. Like, when certain people say things and then you feel it, and that's how it is for me. And so,
No, completely, and that's exactly it. That is the energy we're talking about. Is that when you walk into a room and there's been a fight, it's that feeling. It's like that's the energy we're talking about. So it's starting to understand that in relation to you, and like if your energies are balanced, then you don't experience any symptoms. So health-wise, your energy is first. If we can balance that, then there's not going to be an issue from a health point of view. Yeah. Powerful stuff. And it's just because we can't see it. People don't know it's there.
Yeah. I'm Carlene, and this is Diva Tonight with Jodi Ann Law.
Thank you so much. It's been fun.
Yeah, it has. Thank you.
Diva Tonight with Carlene will be back. Send us a message on Instagram at diva_tonight.